Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today's guest is my friend Theo, and we're going to be talking about self-confidence, mindset, and much, much more. So we'll begin our conversation in a moment with Theo. Just a quick introduction into Theo before we do that. So Theo is a confidence mindset coach, and he has 28 years experience teaching movement to actors in New York City. And the foundation of his program is to give them confidence to go out and express themselves truthfully with no apologies. Theo is happiest when he is in service of others, and that's the purpose of his life, which is awesome. So Theo, first of all, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. I'm glad we could make this happen. So obviously, helping people with their confidence, with their mindset, and being in service to others. So what got you into it? You said it's your purpose of your life. What got you into this this passion?
Well, I've been a teacher my whole life. So, I started teaching music when I was 12 years old. I was a classical musician, and I started teaching young musicians when I was 12, and then I just continued on with that. Got a degree in education, started teaching high school. I've just been a teacher. I teach. That's what I do for a living, and that's what I've done with my life. And it's what gives me the most satisfaction is helping others and seeing others, more than helping others, seeing others progress and make progress is what really turns me on. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Love it. Love it. So been in service for many years to people. So yes, it seems I can see it lights you up with a smile as well of that. So yeah, Theo, I wanted to touch on a little bit about how we can shift from ourselves sometimes to other people and kind of like the importance of this. Is there, because it's quite, when we're in this, I mean, I found personally that I when I've been in states of like suffering or kind of stuck, and I'm like, oh, I've got this problem, which is, it's okay to feel these feelings, I always say, but it is kind of like we got different ways of processing them. Have you found for you personally that kind of focusing on others has helped you deal with any sort of internal challenges?
Yeah, like I always say, and I would say to any of my clients or who are having, for example, I'm working with a client right now who's having a marital issue and probably going through a divorce, and there's a lot of conflict there. And I always say, allow the other person to be more important than you are. That's a question that I pose. Can you allow the other person to be more important than you are? In other words, don't put yourself out in front. Don't make yourself the most important. Make the other person more important. And that's been a phrase that I've used my whole teaching career, and I use it with my clients as well. So what was the second part of your question again? I apologize if I
No,
missed
no,
it.
that's that. I think you answered most of the question. It was, I was just saying, like, being able to make the other. You're saying obviously make the other person more important, and we were talking about, um, like how can you get out of that state of perhaps just being stuck in your head, and that's certainly a good perspective to give that shift.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to my work, it's an easier thing to do because I'm working with another person or a group of
Mm.
people. When I'm on my own and I'm in my head, and we all know what that can be like.
Yeah.
Um, with practice, I've just learned how to, with a lot of mindset practice, and I really believe that mindset is the foundation. Like everybody should have a solid foundation with their mindset. Um, I have tools that I can use to kind of just change channels and not sit in that negativity for as long as I used to.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, whether it's going outside for a walk or putting on a piece of music or just sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to work on this goal for like 15 minutes and then I'm done and I can give myself a check mark. I think that we're so hard on ourselves, right? I mean, I always say like the first thought, we're not always responsible for the first thought that comes to our mind, but when we're aware of what that thought is, we are absolutely responsible for what the next thought is going to be. So when I become aware that I'm having a negative thought, the next thought is it's under my control. But
Mm.
thoughts just pop in, thoughts just pop, how thoughts pop in, right? They just
Yeah,
come, all
yeah.
of a sudden you're like, this negative thing comes to your brain and you're like, I'm never gonna, whatever. And when I realize that I'm kind of going down that pathway, I've come to learn that I can decide what my next thought is going to be. So I can either continue to go down that negative pathway, or I can just switch directions, right? With a whatever kind of tool I want to use to do that. So yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that they can control their thinking.
Mm. I love what you said about the first thought, and not putting forgive me if I've misinterpreted, but not blaming ourselves for that first thought, because it's not necessarily something that we can stop any, like, no negatives coming in, because unfortunately that's impossible in my view to have like no negative thoughts. We're human beings. But I love what you said about actually being able to decide what the second one is, and that was very empowering the way you put that one. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I use that multiple multiple times a day with myself. Um,
Mm.
when you've had a lifetime of like a lot of trauma and a lot of negativity, and your your paradigms, and your uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Perception, I don't know.
Limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs. That's
You
why.
know, all those things that can kind of they just will, like, out of nowhere, all of a sudden I'll be like, you're a failure. And when I realize, that's the thing that I love about the mindset work that I've done with my coaches, is that they've
Mm.
taught me and I've practiced being aware of what I'm thinking. So if I'm aware that that thought just, because thoughts just pop in, right? They just seem to come
Mm.
out of nowhere. I've learned to recognize a negative thought and immediately stop and go, okay, I could continue going down that pathway, but I'm going to make a different decision now. I'm in control of the next thought. So which direction do I want to go? And obviously, I don't want to live down a rabbit hole. So, I just change the channel, or change directions, or walk down another path.
Change the channel. Yeah, I like it. Change the channel on that one. Are there any for you? Are there any, like, you use quite a few tools, I'd imagine, with your like clients? Are there any, like, maybe effective one or two tools that you use like every day for your like mindset? Um, or is it a case of just catching those thoughts for you?
No, I mean, I work on my mindset. I have a routine. I have a morning routine that involves reading from a particular book of just sort of meditations, daily meditations. I meditate, and I read a gratitude journal every morning. Um, and that's just a non-negotiables. And I go outside. First thing I do is I go outside with my
Mm.
dog. I'm grateful to have a dog, and I go for a nice long walk, so I get air and fresh air in my face. Then when I come home, I'll sit down and read my meditation book, and then I will write my gratitude journal. I drink water first thing in the morning. I'll probably do a little 15-minute, exercise, stretch, a little bit of yoga, something like that. And I just try and set myself up for the day so that I go into my day as the best version of myself, if that makes any sense.
Cool. No, no, it sounds like it's a routine that certainly works for you. Um,
Yeah, it's well, with practice, it has. Yeah, I'm not always perfect, but
yeah. No.
we all have those days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, setting yourself up as to win. I like that phrase, as much as possible. So I wanted to kind of touch on something you mentioned. You said, like, had some had to work on mindset through like some past traumas and stuff like that. I know for you that you mentioned when we were like messaging and or so, in some of your information that you'd had a near death experience with a motorcycle once, which left you actually in a coma. So obviously quite a big event in your life, and think like a brain injury as well. Was that right? A bit of a
Yeah,
brain
I mean,
injury.
it was it was 12 years ago, and um, it was around the time of my birthday, and I thought I'm going to buy myself a Harley. I've always wanted a Harley Davidson motorcycle, so I
Yeah.
thought I'm going to buy a Harley Davidson motorcycle. I'm going to learn how to ride it, and then I'm going to spend one summer touring the eastern provinces of Canada. Um, Sadly, I didn't make it. I only made it. I think I had the bike for 6 months, and then I went off road. There was no one else involved, which I'm grateful for. But I went flying in the air, and it was like a swan dive gone bad. I guess I landed on my back. I have no memory of this happening, and smacked my head on the ground. I was in a ditch, and slid under some shrub. And fortunately, there were people who stopped immediately and called 911. But yeah, I had a compound fracture in my left leg. I fractured many vertebrae in my spine. I lost two vertebrae completely. So I used to be 5'11". Now I'm 5'9", which is okay. 5'9". There's nothing wrong with 5'9". I'll
Yeah.
take it.
Okay.
Um, and I suffered a traumatic brain injury, and I was in a coma for a month. And my family flew out. This was in New York State, and my family flew out, and they asked the doctors. They were like, "Well, what can we expect if and when he comes out of this coma?" And the doctor said, "I mean, we can't. There's no predicting what's going to happen. I mean, he could be in a vegetative state. He might stay in the coma. He might mumble some words, blah blah blah, or it could be like turning on a light switch, and he'll just start talking." And that's kind of what happened to me. I guess a light switch went off, and I just started. I started talking, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop talking the whole time I was in the hospital. All I did was talk. Um, but that experience was really, it was interesting because I didn't know that I had been in an accident. I didn't even know I was in the hospital. I had no idea what had happened to me. And so I had to learn how to, I had to learn my name. I had to learn what year it was. I had an occupational therapist who would come in. The book is right there, and she had this book of like 20 questions or something. What's your name? Where are you? What do you do for a living? How old are you? Like very simple questions, right? Um, and I couldn't get any of them right. I mean, I started getting like because I'd forget, right? My short-term memory was gone. And then I remember the one day that she came in, and I answered all 20 questions correctly. And it was like the whole nursing unit came in, and like they were streamers were flying and balloons were being because that meant that my diagnosis changed. So that I upgraded from one condition to a more hopeful condition. And so that put me on a fast track. That really put me on a fast track. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to chew and swallow. I had to learn how to control my bodily functions. I couldn't sit upright. I'd just fall over. I had no feeling in my lower body. Um, yeah, so it was a long process. And then after I got discharged from the hospital, I was in three different therapies a week. I would go to a neuropsych therapist, a physical therapist, and a vestibular therapist because my vestibular system got damaged, which is the one that keeps you balanced. I don't know if you know about your vestibular system, it's in your inner ear. And so my sense of balance is really off. It's gotten better because of therapy and exercises that I do to keep myself from falling over all the time. But I still fall or trip and stumble. And, I've just kind of learned to accept it and just get on with it. So that was my experience with that. What I can take away from that,
Mm.
Yeah, I realize that I have more strength than than I ever thought possible.
Mm,
Like I have more confidence in myself than I ever thought possible. I have more strength, inner strength than I ever thought possible. And I realized that, you know, um, I talk about willingness a lot in some of my posts. And it's based on this book by Sherry Huber called The Key, and the name of the key is willingness. And I've had that book for over 28 years now. And so I talk about willingness, and I realized after, a couple of years went by and I was thinking back on the events of the accident, like why did I try so hard? Like why did I work so hard? I obviously had this sort of innate willingness to want to get better, to want to live, to want to get back to my life, to want to get back to my job. And I think it's just inherent in all of us. It's inherent in the human condition to survive, right?
mm,
I mean, fight or flight. And I realized that I was a fighter and I had a purpose. And that was sort of like what I took. That's the big thing that I took away from that was that from that accident was I think it was a good thing that that accident actually happened. I'm not that I was having a horrible life. I had a great life. Had a great job and
mm.
I was earning good money and doing what I love to do. But it was after my accident, about 5 years after my accident, that I found my first coach and started working on my own mindset. And I would have to say that I made more progress working with my mindset coach than I think I did in therapy. No disrespect to my therapist because they were extremely helpful,
Mm,
but especially the neuropsych therapist, like dealing with my thought patterns and stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, the mindset work has been like completely a life changer for me.
Wow. Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
yeah, certainly can relate. Well, can relate to the mindset, not the obviously your story or anything like that. So yeah, I'm so pleased. Obviously, you're with us today, and you're sharing your story, and see now you're impacting lives and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, obviously you. It's great that you saw the strength within yourself and the confidence that came out of that. Was there a way you saw life differently, like the way you looked at life after it?
Yeah, it was interesting because I started to see life more as an opportunity. Um, and I started to make decisions that I wanted to make for me, like
Mm,
decisions that would make me happy and bring more joy and freedom and purpose into my life. And I mean, I've always been working with a sense of purpose as a teacher. That's kind of number one on the list, but from a more personal perspective. So when I started working with my first coach, um, I couldn't stand living in New York after my accident. I'd lived there for 25 years at that point, I think, and it was just too much stimulation for my brain. So we started. She had me do this exercise, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is envisioning where you want to be in 5 years.
mm,
So I wrote down this whole story about where I wanted to be in 5 years and the kind of life I wanted to be living in 5 years. And strangely enough, I'm living that life now. I'm in the country. I'm on an acreage. I have a pond in the backyard. My dogs can run around. Got a lot of land around me. I can go hiking in the woods anytime I want. I mean, the woods are right there. There are mountains around me, the oceans around me, lakes, and a real sense of sort of calm and quiet. And that's been a life changer for me, for my cognitive health. Um, I'm calling it cognitive health as opposed to mental health. I don't know why, but pet peeve I have.
it's got a certain meaning to you, in
Yeah,
terms
I mean, I don't like to think of myself as having a mental health disability. I think of myself as having cognitive challenges.
mm, yeah. No, yeah, it's in the meaning you get. I always like I've always learned it's in the meaning you give something. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certain words have connotations, right? I mean, when we start thinking about mental health, then we just, we start thinking about all these negative things. And So I just prefer to label them as challenges. They're just challenges, And I say this often all the time to my coaches, and I would say this all the time to my students. It's like, well, they're like, well, I don't have the energy. I don't have I don't have the get up and go. And I'm like, you do have it. You just don't know you have it. Having had a life and death experience, a near death experience, I know that we all have the willingness to do something, to move forward, to get better, right? The willingness is inherent in all of us. It's a part of the human condition, right? Um, we are animals, after all, the human species. And so animals have this willingness to survive. And so I guess I had the willingness to survive. I didn't know I had the willingness to survive, but I'm aware of it now. And so, yeah, that's one tool that I really have taken away from that experience.
Mm. Look, and your willingness to survive, which is a strong one. And yeah, is there, I mean, for just beyond going beyond obviously the willingness to survive, which is obviously a very important thing that we want to do, obviously, and glad,
Right.
so once again, so glad you're here with us. But with and with actually going for something like that's maybe your dream home, like you got like that in that 5 year mark, was there anything that helped you get towards that, whether that was consistently reminding yourself of it, visualizing it, or was it just
Yeah,
consistency?
I just started to take action. I started to reach out to people that I knew living on the West Coast. I was living in New York City on a working visa, and so just before I moved, my working visa expired, and then the pandemic came along, and I know the pandemic was horrible and horribly tragic for so many people who lost lives and family members and loved ones. But for me, it was kind of a gift because it kind of put me in a situation where I had to leave. Like
Mm,
I had to leave because I lost my job because I worked in entertainment and everything in entertainment shut
yeah.
down, right? So um, and so they couldn't renew my visa because I didn't have employment. So I thought, well, this is an opportunity. The universe has presented me with an opportunity to do what it is that I've been dreaming of doing for the last 5 years. So within a very short, in the middle of the pandemic, I drove from New York City to the west coast of Canada in a U-Haul. That took a week, and then found this place. I had a friend I had been in contact with who had this place in the country, and yeah, and so here I am. So
Awesome. So you set your sights to what you wanted, and then took the action, and then saw the opportunities working with the universe on that one.
yeah, I guess that someone was listening to my someone was listening to me. I didn't ask for a global pandemic. I just
No,
want to
no.
say I'm not responsible
Yeah,
for
of
that.
course. Yeah.
But yeah, for me it was an opportunity, you know. And I know for many, as I said, it was a horrific time. Living in New York City during that was horrifying. It was just like insane. So, but yeah, so here I am. But it's not just the willingness, I'm going to go back to that word willingness. Now it's not just the willingness to survive, it's the
Mm,
willingness to thrive
mm,
in my life. It's the willingness to go after the things that I really want in my life. It's the willingness to be successful in my life, whatever success means to you. It's the willingness to pursue my dreams. I've always had a bucket. They talk about the bucket list.
mm.
I've had a bucket list since I was probably 3 years old, and I have literally like checked off most of the things on my bucket list.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, I'd accomplished one goal. Like one of my goals was to be a competitive athlete, and I was a competitive figure skater, and I won some national championships. And then I was like, I had to make a decision whether that was the life I wanted to live, and I didn't want to live life as a competitive figure skater. So I decided I would go to school and get a degree in education. So I did that. I graduated with honors. I started teaching high school. Then I had this idea that I wanted to move to New York to study to be an actor. So I moved to New York from Canada and studied with one of the most renowned acting teachers in North America at the time. Sadly, he's passed away. And then after I was working as an actor, I was working as a personal trainer, and I started teaching movement because I had a movement specialist who brought me on board because I was very athletic. I still am, but not like I was back then. And he saw potential in me as a teacher to teach his techniques. So I apprenticed with him and started teaching his work. And that's basically what I did for 28 years in New York at various universities and studios. So
Wow.
so yeah, and, it's just one thing happened after another, and traveled a lot, circumvented the globe, took 1 year, backpacked around the world because I wanted to. When I graduated university, I thought I want to travel around the world. So I got a one-way ticket. I had to pick my stops, 365 days with a backpack, a tent, a sleeping bag, and some, cooking gear, and off I went.
So with the willingness to thrive, as you described it, I love that phrase. Is it just been a case that you've made like the decision that you wanted to do those things and you've gone for it?
Yeah, I just, I like I said, I always have a goal. Like I have several now that I'm working toward, and or working on and working toward accomplishing. So and I've had these goals. These are goals that I've had, for years. I mean, they're not just new things that have popped up. They go back to, like, way back when, like my whole life. I mean, I've been a writer my whole life. I've published short fiction. I'm working on a memoir about my accident and my experience of what that was like. I'm getting down to the final draft. I'm also starting to work on a book about my technique that I teach, which will be a combination of movement and coaching, mindset coaching. And I realized, in looking back on the 28 years that I was teaching movement in New York, I was really teaching mindset work to actors. I was teaching actors how to not have any apologies. Like, that's one phrase I use all the time. I have no apologies. You can't have any apologies, when you're going for something, right? You can't be apologizing for yourself and apologizing and worrying about, I mean, you don't want to, like, step on anybody's toes, but you want to be mindful of being, a congenial person and a mindful person when it comes to relationships. But yeah, I realized that a lot of that was inherent in my curriculum. Like, I would use phrases like, I don't give a damn what anybody else thinks. I have no apologies. This is it. This is all you have. This moment, the moment that you're in right now. There's no future. There's no past. So embrace the moment that you're in and make the most of it. I mean, those are the kind of words that have been coming out of my mouth for my whole career.
It's awesome. Love it. Always got a goal on your site, and then paying attention to the language.
Paying attention to the language, and yeah, and always having something that I'm working toward. If I don't have a goal, for me, if I don't have a goal or a purpose, then when my alarm goes off in the morning, that's what gets me out of bed. Plus my dogs get me out of bed, and but I immediately put my mind on, what am I going to do today? What are the goals that I have today? And that's one of the things that I teach my clients, is how to set goals, how to strategize, how to structure your time so that you can accomplish them. All those things that we do, right?
Okay,
I know you're familiar with all this, so.
Yeah, so there you go. Well, no, so it's always good to hear a reminder. You can never have enough repetition of of important messages. So yeah, love it. Always setting your sights on what you want rather than anything else, and rather than just the survival, looking at the
Right.
thrive, what's going to make
Right.
the life even better? What can I work
Yeah. So I look back on my accident and I don't see it as a tragedy. I see it as an opportunity.
to?
It gave me an opportunity. It opened up a whole new world of opportunity to me.
Mm.
So
That's how you saw it. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. It's amazing, Theo. So yeah, just we definitely learned a lot from how you went through that and actually your general, perception of life. So I appreciate you for sharing all of that. Just before we wrap up, is there any, maybe there's a final point, maybe you do, maybe you don't, that you want to add in? And then also, where can the listener find you if they want to find out more about your work?
Um, they can find me on Instagram,
Hmm.
and my um, what's my handle on Instagram? Theo Moves One,
Hmm.
at Theo Moves One. On Facebook, it's just my name, Theo Morin.
Hmm.
Um, I'm posting on some content on uh, YouTube. Is it YouTube? Yeah, YouTube. Um, yeah, and just reach out, find me, reach out. You can look at some of my content. I have a nice little short meditation that I put together that if anybody wants access to, I would be more than happy to share that with you. It's very brief. It's about 10 minutes, but
Oh, brilliant.
it's something that I've been teaching my whole life and something that I practice every day. Um, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, it's definitely some great value we can learn from you. So I'll be sure to put those in the show notes. So once again, Theo, a big thank you for coming on today's show.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So,
I
of
appreciate the invite.
course. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.